Yeah. So I'm talking to the king, and he says there's a chance we have to sacrifice you for the greater good. And I'm like, okay, I guess, but there's no way this guy falls for such a. All units, mission accomplished. Hello and welcome. Today we're going to take a look at the 3 levels of difficulty when it comes to trapping the queen, as well as how to do it in a real game, in an opening, and in the middle game. Let's get started. Level 1 of difficulty is going to be when the queen is already trapped and has nowhere to go, and we just need to attack it. So here, in this position, white played knight f5, which unfortunately cuts off the queen from this cape, and there's no more available squares for the queen. We have everything covered with our knights and our rook. So now it's time to attack the queen, and indeed we have bishop e8. This traps the queen, and we win. This might sound nice and easy, but you have to watch out not to remove defenders of certain squares. So in this position, black's queen is out of moves, but you have to be very careful about how you go on to trap it, because, for example, bishop g4 lets go of the g2 square, so you actually get checkmated. So the correct move here is knight f2, and this indeed traps the queen. The takeaway is be careful about removing defenders of the squares from the queen. So if possible, try to get a new piece into the trapping of the queen. Now we move on to level 2 of difficulty, which is when the queen is a little bit low on squares but still has some escape. So you first have to identify what those escape squares are, and then cover the queen's current square as well as those. So in this particular example, the queen can escape to e7 and e8. So we highlight the squares to make it visible, and then you're instantly going to see, oh, a rook on this file would do the job. So that's how you think of rook e1. And this indeed traps the black queen. If noticing escape squares for the enemy queen is a little bit difficult at first, here's something that I teach my beginner students. So we pretend that it's black's queen to move. Where could they go? And then they highlight all the squares that they can move to with the black queen, and they have something like this. And now hold control on your keyboard and basically right click the squares again for the ones that you're protecting. So this is protected by the rook here. This is protected by the rook. The queen guards these two. Rook is protecting these. The rook here is protected by the king. This is covered by the queen. So you go one by one and make sure to cover all the ones that are protected. And once you do, you will get something like this, where all the green ones are actually squares that they can escape to. So you just highlight the queen's current square and leave those highlighted, and you have a nice visual of all the squares you need to cover in order to trap the queen. So these are a few steps in between that you can do that help do this. One small thing before we continue to level 3, I see that 80% of you are not subscribed, so if you're enjoying the video, if you like this kind of content, feel free to subscribe to let me know, and that way you improve at chess even faster. Level 3, the last level of difficulty, is when you have to trap the queen with multiple pieces in the same move. And this tends to be a lot more difficult than anything else, but you still have to do the same process. So notice the escape squares, highlight the current square, and if you see something weird like this, like not one piece can do that, that's still fine. You might be able to trap the queen, but just look at all moves that try to trap the queen, that attack the queen. So here we have either knight g5 or knight f4 or bishop f1, and if you go one by one, you're going to see that knight g1 attacks that square while discovering the bishop's attack on these. It's like the perfect move. Today, I came across this position in my tactics training on chess.com, and this is a 3019 rated puzzle. But again, it's a queen trap, so it falls under our topic and under the level 3 difficulty, where multiple pieces interact and you have to calculate some variations here. So if you want, pause the video here and try to solve it. I'm going to give you 3, 2, 1. So the solution is going to be knight c4, because it's important that we cover the main escape square, queen b6, because after that they could escape all the way. So knight c4 is the first move, covering these two, and now they cannot come to b5 on the count of the discovered attack. So we go knight d6 check and win the queen. So the main sort of move here is either queen b4 or queen c3. And if you go one by one, you're going to see that the queen c3 runs into bishop d2 and the queen is trapped. So the more testing try is queen b4, because now after bishop d2, they have queen a4, and they have successfully escaped. We could do knight b2 to attack it again, but after queen a3, best we could do is repeat like this. So the trick is that in this position, we go pawn to c3 to discover the queen's protection of the a4 square. And now they pretty much have to take. And now bishop d2 fully traps the queen. A 3019 rated puzzle. Now that we've seen the levels of difficulty and the thought process required to successfully trap the queen, let's see how it happens in a real game. So in openings, it's very famous that the b and g pawns are poison pawns, usually. There's many opening variations in which when the queen takes the b pawn, or sometimes the g pawn, but more frequently the b pawn, it gets trapped because it's surrounded by so many opposing pieces. So in this particular position, if we apply the same thought process, we're going to see, oh, the queen can only escape to b6 or c3 and the queen's current square. So combining those, we have the perfect move knight a4, covering all of those squares and successfully trapping the queen. And to show an example of the poisoned g-pawn, it's going to be very similar. The queen wanders off too far into the enemy base and it gets trapped here. What are the squares now? They could escape by taking the rook, and that's about it. So as long as we make a rook move to attack the queen, that should do it. But rook g1, unfortunately, lets go of the h3 square. So rook g1 would be a mistake because of queen h3. So we go rook h2 instead, and this indeed successfully traps the queen. That's usually how it happens in openings, but in middle games, it's a little bit different. In middle games, you have to notice the moment where the opponent plays a move, at which point their queen is very low on squares. So here, f4 was played, cutting off the only queen's escape, and if we take a look at the queen, it's very crowded around the queen. There's no escape squares right now, so we can aim to trap it. So this should be the initial trigger, which forces you to look at this kind of stuff. And now, how do we trap the queen? Well, rook h5 may be tempting, but rook h5 runs into bishop takes, and after we take back, we do win the queen, but we give up too much material to do that. So they go f5, and after we take their queen, they take our bishop with tempo on the queen, and after we recapture in some fashion, they're going to take our rook. Ultimately, we did win the queen, but they took a lot of stuff for it. So 2 rooks are usually better than the queen. Coming back to the initial position after f4, we just have the simple pawn move f6, and the game is over. Put a final conclusion on everything and a small recap of everything that we learned today. So level 1 of trapping a queen is when the queen is already low on squares, and you just need to find a move that attacks it to successfully win the queen. Level 2 is going to be where you have to cover the escape square as well as the queen's current square. That tends to be a little bit more difficult. And level 3, it's going to be multiple pieces combined or a big sequence of moves. But still, just keep at it and calculate concrete variations. The one thing we said you have to watch out for is removing defenders of certain squares. So the piece you're moving maybe was holding onto an important square, now allowing the queen to escape. And finally, we said, when can you do this? Well, either when your opponent takes your poisoned b or g pawns in the opening, or in the middle game where their queen is generally low on squares. Congratulations! Now you have everything it takes to go out there and trap some queens. So thank you very much for watching. A like on the video if you enjoyed it, comment down below with any questions you might have, and subscribe on my channel to see more stuff like this. Take it easy.